Hi folks, I'm Craig Taylor, and as always a huge thank you for joining me here on my YouTube channel, the Bushcraft Padawan. I don't know about where you live, but certainly here in the south of the UK, spring is definitely springing. No matter where I go, whether it's down at ground level or a little higher up in the trees and the shrubs, there are definite signs that spring is ready to put in a full-blown appearance. And with that, I imagine many of you folks that are perhaps watching this, many of the people I suspect in the Facebook groups that I'm on, may be starting to come out of winter hibernation and starting to look to venture out into the woods, doing their thing outside as the weather becomes more amenable to many people. So I thought there may be some value in putting together a short list of things to check in relation to your kit prior to going back outdoors, perhaps after being indoors or not as active for the past few months. Now I would hasten to add, this I hope isn't an obvious list of things to check. These are things that are very often forgotten about. They're very often either not obvious or they're so obvious that you kind of don't think about them. They're just so everyday you kind of forget to check them before you go out. So that's the first thing. It's hopefully not an obvious kit checklist. And the second thing is that the reason that I wanted to put this together was one, to help people out, but secondly, on my last trip out, which I will link to up here, I actually discovered a piece of my kit, quite a critical piece of my kit, was starting to become degraded, was starting to become damaged, and I captured that on video. And again, that video that I linked to previously, up in the top right hand corner of your screen, you'll see me talking about that in more detail. So that was kind of the catalyst for creating this video. I've got a few pieces of kit down here out of screenshot that I'll be talking through, and hopefully it'll spark a little inspiration for you to take a look at your kit a little bit more closely, and perhaps some unusual pieces of kit that you don't normally look at as closely before you head outdoors for the first time. On to the first piece of kit then. If you've seen my previous video, you know what I'm going to bring up here, but it's some cordage. This was actually the ridge line for my tarp that I use, and as you can see there, this cord has actually become quite seriously frayed and damaged. This was a metre or two from the end of one of my ridgeline tie-out points for my tarp. So clearly, me wrapping it around trees and pulling it tight and getting that tension on the cordage, it's not like that, and it started to degrade. That's on my ridgeline. It could have been your guy lines. It could have been any cordage that you're really using for your tarp, or anything else has become damaged. So there's maybe something that you are so used to handling and doing almost subconsciously when you tie up your tarp, you're maybe not paying that close attention to the condition of your cordage. So first thing to check all the cordage on all of the gear, tarp or not. Check your cordage before you head back outdoors again this spring. Now in my previous video you saw me resurfacing the cordage on my tarp, making some changes to it. At the very end of that video, as I was packing it all away, I'd done my video shoot for the day, I was just packing everything away, I actually noticed some damage to my tarp itself. Let me show you the damage, then explain what it is that you're looking at. Hopefully you can see my thumb there, and you should be able to see around this part, my finger's just obscured, there's actually some damage to that loop that my thumb is running through. You can see that there. Now this is the ridgeline loop. This is one of the loops that runs across the top, or the centre top of my tarp. There are 5 in total, 2 at the end and then 3 across the middle. All 3 of the middle ones had that same level of damage, that fraying where something has abraded against it. I'm assuming the something is my ridgeline, and it has caused that damage. Now I've only had this a little under 2 years. It doesn't get day in, day out use. It doesn't get week in, week out use. It hasn't even been used every month, to be perfectly honest. So I was quite disappointed in the tarp itself. It's a DD 3x3 MC tarp. Contacted DD Tarps, it's outside of their warranty, which is only 12 months. They were kind enough though to send me, let me show you. They were kind enough though to send me out some new tarp loops for me to stitch on myself at my own cost and at my own risk. So very nice of them to do that. Thank you, DD Tarps, very helpful. But they weren't prepared to accept that there was anything wrong with the tarp itself. Lots of people get on with these tarps, I know that. I got on with it up until realising there was that damage there. However, when I looked more closely at Amazon, which I probably should have done in the first place, there were a number of people that had less than pleasurable experiences with the tarp quality of construction and also the after-sale service. So a lesson learned there, folks. Another thing to check then, if your tarp has tie-out loops and ridgeline loops, check those as well. I didn't, and I only spotted it kind of by mistake because I was paying very close attention to my tarp when I did my last video. So please do pay attention to yours before you wander outdoors again in the near future. Next up, your compass. Almost regardless of what compass it is, I imagine there's going to be some form of fluid inside your compass housing that the actual needle balances off, which allows it to rotate freely, unhindered. If you have a bubble in there, your magnetic needle is more likely to not be able to rotate around unencumbered. It may lead to errors. So take a look at your compass if you use one. Does it have a bubble in there? If it does, it's not necessarily the end of the world. I sometimes find just bringing the compass in from where I store it in the garage, which is cold, bringing it back into a room temperature room tends to resolve the problem almost overnight. If that doesn't, placing it on a radiator sometimes can do it. If that doesn't remove it, you're possibly looking at a new compass, I'm afraid, but far better to realise that at home before you get out there, the weather closes in, you decide you need to take a bearing and your compass isn't working properly. So do check your navigation equipment, particularly your compass, before you head back outdoors again this spring. Moving on, let's take a look at batteries. I have a sat nav here that takes batteries. I have a head torch here that takes batteries. You may have other equipment as well that takes batteries as well. If you've not been outdoors during the winter, then you've probably not been using your headlamp, your head torch. Therefore, you probably haven't realised that the batteries have corroded, that the bulb may have gone, which isn't technically a battery problem, but you get where I'm coming from, or that the power within those batteries is very, very low. So now is a good time to test them out, possibly take them out and remove them completely and replace with fresh batteries before you start heading outdoors again this spring. No worse time than realise that your batteries are dead when you really need to switch your head torch on or when you really need to rely on that GPS to give you a fix. Med kit. I don't know about you, but and I hope I don't live to regret this, but I rarely go inside my med kit when I'm outdoors. If I do cut myself, I carry a little cuts kit on my trouser pocket and put a little plaster on with it. I rarely go into my bigger med kit, thankfully, when I'm outdoors, which means that it's very easy for dressings to become out of date, for any ointments you've got in there to become out of date or have burst, for any medication tablets that you've got in there to become out of date as well. It's one of those things that you rarely go into. When you do, you really need it, and of course no worse time than to realise that things have gone out of date. So now again is a good time to check those meds, those ointments, those dressings, things like that inside your med kit, and now's a good time to replace them if they're looking at going out of date in the next few months or maybe the next year or so. Almost there. Your lighter or lighters, whatever it is that you carry. If you're carrying a gas or a fuel lighter, again, now is a really good time to check that it hasn't leaked, that it hasn't evaporated, that the flint hasn't worn down, that it doesn't create a spark to ignite whatever vapour's being given off. If you carry lighting equipment such as this, and I imagine most of us do, probably multiple of these, various different pockets around us, then do check them for fluid levels, for gas levels, whatever it is, before you head back outdoors again. These things are very, very easy, or evaporate very, very easily, if not, if you don't keep an eye on them. Paul Kirtley wrote a great article, and I will link to it below this video on YouTube. So if you're watching this on Facebook, you want to read the article, head over to YouTube, look in the description below the video, and you'll see that I'll link out to an article by Paul Kirtley where he talks about the power of habit, and when habit fails, things like forgetting to check your lighters has the potential to lead to a problem. So do check over there and check out that video on YouTube. That's where I'm going to link to it from. And finally, or is it? I talked about cordage earlier on today, and we would use cordage for our tarps. We may carry some around in our pocket. We may have some for if everyone wants to construct a bow drill, things like that. But quite often the piece of cordage that we often forget about, that is so everyday to us that we sometimes forget it's there, of course, are your bootlaces. They're cordage themselves, aren't they? And of course bootlaces get constant use, and they're constantly being given a bit of a battering as you're walking over stones, uneven ground, bracken, fallen leaves, twigs, everything. They're getting a real bashing, that cordage, more so than your tarp would probably ever get. So do pay attention to your laces as well. Nothing worse than getting up one morning under your tarp, pulling your laces tight, ping, and you've now got 2 pieces of cord. It's not the end of the world. You could easily repair it, but it's more hassle, isn't it? For me, one of the areas of weakness that I often find in this particular style of boot, and I love the boots otherwise, are the metal quick eyes here. Down here you've got the traditional sort of round eyes that you'd have in most trainers and shoes at home, but midway on many boots you start to have metal eyes here, and of course metal against cordage, usually the metal is going to win. So I tend to find that's one area that starts to degrade and fray more quickly than other areas of my lace. So there we have my I don't know what it was, definitely wasn't top 10, but we have a list of things for you to potentially check if you've not been outdoors for some time before you head out. And even if you have been outdoors, even if you've been going out regularly, as I have, I still missed the fraying on the tarp line until last week. I missed the fraying of my tarp tie-out points, my loops, until last week, and I've been going out regularly. So even if you have been going out regularly, perhaps just step back and take a close look at your kit and look at some of the less obvious areas of wear and tear and degradation, rather than the obvious ones that we might all default to, like, is my knife sharp, is my knife rusty, is my axe sharp, is my axe rusty. Have a look perhaps at some of the other pieces of kit that you carry around with you and make sure that that's working okay, and is going to stand you in good stead and support you when you're out there and really need it. If I've missed anything, if there's anything that you think, I often check this, Craig, and it's easily overlooked, but you haven't mentioned it, brilliant, please do mention it below. Whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, do mention it below. If you're going to mention it below on Facebook, brilliant, thank you, but do head over to YouTube. I tend to find more people comment underneath my videos on YouTube than they do on Facebook. I'm not saying that everyone needs to set up a YouTube account, I'm not saying that, but if you really want to get other people's opinions and ideas, do head over to YouTube, because in my experience more people engage in the conversation there than they do on Facebook. But if you want to comment on Facebook, that's absolutely fine as well. Comment in both places, why not? Thank you ever so much for watching. If you're not yet a subscriber, what have you been doing? Do click on that button in this corner of the screen and you will magically become a subscriber. Well folks, I don't quite know what happened there. I'm at home now editing the video, and the last few seconds or minute or so of that footage has just gone. It's not in my editing software, and neither is it back on the original SD card or on the camera, so I have no idea what happened. I was about to say, click on the link in this corner of the screen here and you will magically become a subscriber. If there's anyone in your network that you think would benefit from watching this video, please do share it. And I was going to wish you all fun out in the woods, and that I will see you in the next video. So you didn't miss a great deal, I just felt a bit tight chopping it off at that point there. See you in the next video.